All right, you guys, welcome to another episode of Tell Me Everything. I am your host, Danielle Spinelli. I have Matthew Leffler with us today. Oh my God. I am like still wiping tears from my eyes. So freaking funny. At the very end, I'm going to clip in his puppet. Yes, the man has a puppet show on YouTube. Subscribe to it. It's freaking hilarious. Anyways, watch the clip. It's so funny. Even if you don't even watch the whole podcast, skip to the end. I swear to God, you're going to laugh your butt off. But anyways, we talk so much about so many different things. So first of all, who Matt is, how he came up, all that stuff. I don't think he talks enough about who he really is on his show because he has to ask all the questions and be the host. If you have not checked out the Armchair Attorneys podcast, I highly suggest it. Matt does an awesome way of explaining complicated things that I do not understand because I am blonde and stupid. And no, not all blondes are stupid, but the chemicals get to my brain and leave me alone. Anyways, but no, Matt does a great job at explaining things that are really complicated in a very like, oh, that makes sense way. So I really appreciate that about him. From the moment I first met him, like me and him hit it off, and I just love that guy. He's amazing. So if you do not check out all his podcasts, his puppet YouTube show, you need to. I'm telling you, you need to. It's so fun. Okay, let's recap what we went over. I got my post notes. All right, we talk about so many things: the international tariffs, and Trump, and kind of how that actually relates to us as average Americans. We also talk about how that impacts the logistics industry. And like I said, really dumbing that down. As much as I hate to talk about tariffs because it's confusing, that's probably why I hate talking about it because I'm like, oh, I don't understand. He really makes it where it's like, okay, what does this really mean to us? And I think that's key, right? We got to understand. Another thing, let's whip out the Post-it note again. The other thing that we really talk about is broker liability. Really hone in on that. So, what exactly, kind of all the different cases that are out there right now, what does that mean for the broker? And quote from him, there's a lot of brokers that are staying up all night, kind of thinking about, well, what are the risks that I'm taking? What type of standards should we be setting in place? And I think kind of Matt brings a good point up on here. If you're not just simply falling off of FMCSA's data and that's the only one and only thing that you're doing, you do have some sort of platform out there that it is checking safety regulations, making sure that they're compliant. That out of service percentage really is, I think, very important according to the national average. So I do think if you have a platform, make sure that that is at least checked. You at least need to be comparing those two. If you are taking a risk on a carrier that is lower in the out of service percentages, I mean, I wouldn't, but maybe if it's like a really short run or something like that. I don't know. That's still scary. Don't put them on the interstate for the love of God. But anyways, we talk a lot about that. I think some of the cases that are really making the impact for logistics brokerages is kind of what we'll be talking about the most. Probably have him on again because he's just like I said, he's just so knowledgeable and knows so many things. He does all those fine tooth readings and highlights all the things he needs to talk about, makes notes, and then dumbs it down for people like me. Hopefully people like you too. That's probably why you're watching. So, anyways, let's talk to Matt and have him on here. Like I said, wait to the very end at that puppet thing. God dang it, it's so funny. I was literally wiping my eyes for like minutes. It's so fun. All right, you guys, let's jump at it.
Tell me everything. Tell me everything.
We've been talking about this forever. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Matt. Like I was just saying, we've been talking about doing this for a long time. So I'm so happy you're finally on with me.
This is real life. It's happening. We're both very busy people, but we have found a way to organize ourselves and have a conversation. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you coming on. So I want everybody to know, because you're usually the guys asking all the questions and going on panels and just kind of talking and saying your whole spiel, but like nobody I feel like really knows Matt. So let's like break all that down, do the tell me everything thing. So let's
Yeah,
start off with your whole life story. No,
absolutely.
yeah. Say how, I guess, tell me everything. Tell
Yeah.
me, kind of how you got started, why you became an attorney, kind of what you're doing now. Let's break it all down.
Yeah, so I never had a choice in this industry. So my grandfather got back from World War II. He was a tank commander, and he started a company hauling grain in central Illinois called Leffler and Son. So he's a truck driver. He got to about 6 power units when it was all said and done. But, fast forward a little bit, my own father, his first job out of college in the 1970s was working for a company called Roadway. This is before deregulation. This is the before times, the long, long ago. And he spent about 15 years at Roadway before he started his own company. And his company was very literal. It's called Outsource Fleet Services. And we got in the business of repairing and maintaining commercial vehicles for a company called Roadway Package Systems. RPS. RPS became Caliber, and Caliber later became FedEx Ground. So
Oh,
I knew of transportation from the very beginning of when I was born. My dad already spent a decade at Roadway at that point, and I knew that transportation meant that my father was gone for half the year. That's what trucking is, was your parents are not there. And I thought to myself, the one thing I'll never, ever, 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 ever do is get in transportation. But here I am. Here I am. I go to law school to become an attorney, right? And I thought I would never travel in that kind of capacity. And I began as an insurance defense attorney. I represented trucking companies in catastrophic accidents, the very worst day of the life of a motor carrier. And I
yeah.
spent a few years doing that before I went in-house to my father's business and kind of fell into this industry. And 15 years later, there's no sign of escape.
Right. Once you get in logistics, you ain't getting out. Like there's so many different avenues of logistics. You're just gonna go into a different avenue of it. You ain't getting out.
Well, it's a $1 trillion domestic industry. This is one of the biggest industries in the country, and it's also a very small industry. A lot of the players, the same people you see at the conferences and the places all across the country, and it's everything. It's one of the most common jobs is to drive a truck in 29 different states, and so I've fallen in love with this business, and I don't think I'd ever want to do anything else.
Yeah. I really love the people in logistics. Like they're so everybody that I know in logistics is like a real person. You know what I
That's
mean? Where
right.
like other industries are just like uppity or they're mainly uppity, but logistics people are not like that. Like it's like and I always make fun of like brokers because it's usually like the frat boys or frat girls in there or whatever, like that's
Yeah.
kind of that standard or whatever. But those are like the funnest people. They're always good down for a good time.
It's interesting because, like, the brokers are still a relatively new part of this industry. I mean, they did not exist in this form and fashion 45 years ago. They didn't really start catching on until like the early 2000s, I think maybe late 90s. So we're watching a new segment grow where, 20 years ago, brokers moved 5, 6% of the freight. And today it's like 20, 25%. So it's been a growing aspect of the business, and their liability and all the compliance is getting more and more interesting every single day.
Yeah, no, I definitely and that's what we'll talk about a lot today is finding out the liability or at least what you know of it. Because I it's a slippery slope with all the different, cases that are out there and still pending, and it's kinda like, "Oh, what do we do there?"
My job is to educate, delight, and terrify people. So I teach a supply chain law at Michigan State University College of Law, Go Green. And I teach that to second and third year law students because we need people to understand like what is actually happening, what
Yeah.
cases are coming around, and what to be on the lookout for over the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so what else are you up to? I know you're doing, you have your own podcast, talk about
Yeah, I
that.
do. So the Armchair Attorney podcast, it has been around now for about 3 years. We're very fortunate to have some great partners with Genlogs and the folks at DAT. Dial a Truck, they help sponsor what we do. I spend most of my time breaking down big legal topics and interviewing people, much like what you're doing here. And then I have 4 children. There are 12, 9, and twins that are going to be 3 in November. From what I remember of my sanity, it seems like I'm getting closer to finding it, but it's not there yet. I know it's within grasp, but
Yeah.
it's not quite in my hands yet.
You're about to hit real teens though. Like the 12-year, that's a boy, right? Or a
It's a
girl?
boy. I got 3 boys and 1 daughter, and the daughter's one of the twins, so I got some time. I think it's gonna be better. It gets easier, doesn't it?
It does, but I will say whenever boys turn 13, then they start testing and
Ooh,
they start beefing up and they're like, "Oh, I'm cool." And I know more than my parents. They're like,
I
"No, you're
can't wait.
an
I
idiot."
can't wait. That'll be
Yeah.
so much fun.
And then they
Being a
start
father is the greatest thing in the world. I love that.
yeah, that's and me as a mom, I've been so I was a young teen mom, so it's basically all I know. But
Mm.
it's funny because I think because I was a young teen mom, they're basically like my best friends. So I'm like, "What are you guys doing at school today? What's happening?" I'm going to the high school
Tell
game.
me.
Yeah,
Good
tell
for
me.
you.
But
I play video games with my boys, and, I used to be okay at video games, but now I can't compete, so I have them protect me. Like, in Fortnite, they'll surround me and keep me safe and then bring me good gear, like that. That's what you're supposed to do. I'll
Yeah.
provide at home, but you go provide me, legendary weapons when I'm playing Fortnite.
Oh my god, that's so funny. I bet they love playing with you. That'll be like memories they'll never forget.
We have a good time. We have a good time. We do a lot of fun stuff. I mean, and beyond the teaching stuff in the law firm and the podcast, I dabble with consulting and screaming on the internet. So I write for different publications, usually about legal topics, but really anything. And I go on the radio from time to time. So whenever someone wants to talk to me, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't.
Yeah, everybody always likes you talking. So I met you. Let me think. Actually, I think the very first time I met you was at the Broker Carrier Summit, the one that I'm excited to talk about. It was whenever we had it was about safety, and
Hmm.
at that time we were there, and there was like three people in the audience. And to be fair, there was another one going on about fraud, and like everybody was in that room. But I should say, you were like, where is everybody? This is so important. And then here we are, I guess this is like a year and a half later, and like the Hope Trans thing happened. And it's like, yeah, we told you.
The thing is, like, history doesn't repeat, but it has a way of rhyming. And so when I talk about safety, again, let me just be very clear. The worst day in a motor carrier's life and many brokers' life is when something catastrophic happens and someone's dead or severely injured. And
Right.
that was my everyday Monday through Friday and often Saturdays. And so I spent a lot of my time looking at the absolute worst thing you could possibly imagine,
Right.
looking at medical records, looking at pictures, and you ask the question, how does this not happen? How can you stop this? And
Yeah.
I like to talk about vehicle maintenance because it's not something no one really finds particularly interesting other than maybe me and a couple dozen people. But our national out of service rate for commercial vehicles in this industry is 22%. That means if you go outside on any truck and any trailer on the road right now, if you looked at them, 1 in 5 would not be safe at all at any speed. They have to be stopped and repaired. And that is how we operate. That's not new. It's been around for a long time.
Right.
So cargo theft is interesting because it's the criminal element of it, the sophistication of the players. It's different than what used to be with opportunistic, but
Right.
it is a small drop in the bucket, in my opinion, as to what we
Agreed.
really ought to care about. And the Hope Trans is a great example. Danielle, Hope Trans had a 35% out of service rate.
It's insane.
35%.
Yeah.
And they were still authorized to haul freight in this country. And you're like, what? In what industry is that acceptable? In ours. In ours.
Right. A 35% chance of even like a death rate as a doctor or whatever. And I don't know anything about medical stuff, but I'm assuming that's what it's called. You would be out of practice, I would assume. I would hope so anyways.
I use the
So
analogy of going to the grocery store. If I had 5 gallons of milk and I said, Danielle, one of these gallons of milk is unsafe, you'd say, I don't think you should be in business as a grocery store. And I'd say, that's a really interesting idea. Unfortunately, that's not how this works. You have to buy one of these gallons, and one of them is unsafe. And I can't tell you which one. And
yeah.
that's what we see every single day in this industry.
Or they actually do see which one and they still are like, oh, well, his rates are the cheapest. So whatever. Yeah.
Absolutely. Our addiction to ever faster, ever cheaper freight is what has caused a lot of the issues we see today. And
Yeah.
that's part of deregulation in 1980. And a lot of the innovations we see, these are the natural consequences of those innovations. And so I spend a lot of time talking with motor carriers and brokers and shippers about the worst possible day of someone's life. And
Right.
how you navigate these things is interesting.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. And every time I see you at anything and you're always speaking, that's usually the only time you attend because you're just cool. But But every time you are on there, I always learn so much. You just have so much knowledge because you see this. You see so many different cases all the time where I only hear things every now and then. This was your day to day for a long
Well,
time.
I fundamentally believe anyone can understand the topics that are going on. The legal issues that we see in this country are all something that you can understand if you're able to take some time and have it described and explained in a way that's accessible. So for me, the greatest pleasure I have, the greatest privilege that I have is to talk about very complicated things to people who don't necessarily understand them and
Mhm.
make them accessible so that you can go, I understand what the stakes are. I can actually influence how these things go, as opposed to saying, I don't get it. I'll just let someone else handle it.
Yeah.
And then you're stuck against the wall when you don't understand what you've agreed to.
Well, that and whenever you have a case against you and you're like, I don't even know what I did wrong because I don't understand anything, which honestly, I was talking to somebody the other day and I'm like, I don't read. I've gotten so bad where like I don't read anything. I want a picture, and then if it's intriguing to me on the picture, then I will read. But I'm the worst. I'm probably
I
like
print off most of the things that I read. I print them off and I note them because I have like I'm an old man. I'm 40 years old. So I have to print it and look at it and touch it, and then I can make sense of it. I do try to watch things, but I don't watch a lot of stuff, honestly.
really. That's funny. That must be the attorney and like why you are so good at what you do. Because and like probably in school you're like top performer. My daughter is really smart. She wants to be an attorney. That's who I got to get you to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she's like that. She has to take notes, and I'm like, I'll just watch everything and listen, and I don't want to read.
For me, it's trying to find primary sources. So many articles you'll see or videos you see with people making their own opinions on something, and I love opinions. Everyone's got plenty of them, but for
Yeah,
me, it's I want to see the primary document. I want to understand what's being discussed, why it's being discussed, and then what happens next. Because I think when we look at supply chain, you don't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. And you
yeah,
don't know where you've been unless you know where you are. So it's this continuation of like, how did we get here? And then
yeah,
you work backwards.
yeah. Well, I want to jump into. We can talk about this the whole show,
Yeah.
but I want you to say one more thing that you're into, and that is
Yeah.
your YouTube channel.
Yeah. So the Armchair Attorney YouTube channel is great. I put my podcast
No,
there.
don't
Is
talk
there
about
another one you're referring to?
yes, your puppet. Whip it out. Let me see it. I know you got it there.
I dabble. So this is
I love her.
Chef. He's a good friend of mine. I've known him now for a couple of decades. He's a character that I invented, but I just put him in different things. During April last year, or this year, I should say, I did an April Fool's gimmick where I was going to quit the practice of law and go into puppetry full time. And so the YouTube channel was spawned. And this is actually the first time ever I'm publicly talking about this because I generally do not speak about it because I don't want people to conflate that entity with me. We're very different. We're
Well,
not the
that's why you don't
same.
show your face on there. Yeah, it's for
Exactly.
fun. It's for fun, but it is really fun, and I love that you do that. Like we met at dinner, and I was like, "You're like, yeah, did you not know I do puppetry?" I'm like, "What?" Like,
That's right.
what a random thing that I would know about you.
So like I have these like I think anybody needs to have some type of hobbies. And so the
Yeah,
hobbies that I have besides like being a parent and being a lawyer and all these things I do for fun and for work.
good
I
job.
have a crested gecko that I take care of. I have a fish tank that I take care of all this live plants and all this stuff. But I wanted to make something that was completely unrelated to anything I've ever done and
Yeah,
something that wasn't necessarily linked to me. And
yeah.
so the chef, just a chef is the actual handle for the thingy. And we've had like dozens and dozens, almost 100 hours of content viewed. And they're usually about like 20 seconds long. So it's very short content, very bite sized. It's great.
It's
It's
really fun.
fantastic.
It's so great. I am gonna link that into this because I think people should watch it. It's so fun. I'm so glad you do that.
Well, I wanted to make something that my older boys could watch and find funny. So like
Yeah.
my barometer is like if I make them laugh, like before I actually post something. Okay, that they like it, I'll do it. Let's see how it goes. My wife is like, that's not funny. I'm like, that's okay. It's not for you. It's not
It's
for
for
you. It's
it's
for
well,
somebody else.
it's for the 12-year-old boy, but which is
That's right.
also most men that they're 12-year-old boys. So
100%.
yeah,
100%.
that's why you've had so many viewers and stuff. That's so
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, it's not a lot. I mean, I think we have maybe 89 or 90 subscribers, but we started it like, just like on a whim, and it's okay. It's doing okay.
Listen, 89 or 90 is, I think, more subscribers on YouTube than my channel has. So it's
I
good
think
work.
my main one is also like 200. So it's not like I'm not. That's not my platform. My platform is other places, but I try to be in the places.
Yeah, it's been so interesting as like now a podcaster. I guess I can officially
Yeah, content creator.
content creator. The I really love being super creative on that. It takes up a lot of my time and thought space more than I thought it would when I first started, but I really love it. Like thinking like of new creative ways to talk about this or like I
Yeah,
did, I don't know if you saw in my whatever my post or whatever, but I did like a thing about this month is about on the Fraud Girl series. It's about cluster theft and BOL manipulation. And so
interesting.
then
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I've been trying to do 90s themed on all my stuff just because it's fun. I'll move
Good for
into
you.
another decade eventually. But doing the 90s, so I did a Nirvana. I've played with ChatGPT for so long, and I had me as a Nirvana
Oh,
player.
that's awesome. Good for
I
you.
want to be there I need to
See,
be
you're
like,
more creative than me. That's a lot of effort. I just record it live and then I let the machine break it apart for me.
well, I
Yeah,
used to be a
absolutely.
painter, fun fact. I used to
Oh,
paint on
really?
and sell stuff.
I painted miniatures when I played Warhammer 40K, if that's any bit, of a relation. I don't think it
I don't even know
is.
what that is,
Oh,
but
it's like tabletop miniatures. I'm an
oh.
old-fashioned nerd, classically trained nerd. I played Dungeons& and Dragons.
Did you really?
I did, yeah, yeah. I ran as a paladin. I've done a rogue, just kinda living the dream.
Every time I hear about that, I always think of that movie with Zac Efron. What's that movie called? 30 Again? No, something like 17 Again, 17
Oh,
Again. You need to watch it if you haven't watched it because
okay, I'll make a note.
yeah, I'll send you that note because you gotta watch it. You'll laugh so hard, and I love Zac Efron.
Absolutely. I do hope someday to be a teenager again. I think mentally I'm still in my mid-20s, so
For
I
sure.
feel like I have that going for me, but I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
I'm not sure it's
your
cool
kids
anymore.
whenever your kids become teenagers, I feel anyways like I'm back in my teen stuff. Like, I say the teen lingo, the 6, 7, whatever, like that
What
whole
is 6, 7? Like 6 is afraid of 7 because 7, 8, 9? Is that what you're referring to?
I wish it made that much sense, but 6, 7 is literally nothing. They have, like, a handshake that does the little whatever. It's just a
I
wrap.
don't understand. I don't understand. That's okay though. That's okay. I'm not hip. Maybe someday. Maybe someday.
Well, your kids will help you get there because they'll find out stuff and they'll tell you things you're like, "Oh, okay, I didn't know." It's
I
fun.
love it. I look forward to it. Now, there is noise in the background, so I apologize to
Fun.
your audience. The dog, there's someone here at the door, and the dog is very excited, and so are the twins. So this is the
Quit
beautiful
order
thing about working from home.
I know, quit ordering all those Amazon packages. That's what it
One
is.
would hope, but that is
Yeah.
not the case. That is not the future that I have.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, so anything else that you're up to? I mean, that's plenty.
Yeah,
Are
I mean that's pretty much all the things. I'm gonna be at a couple different places. Like so, I go to conferences just like you. I go to conferences all across the country. I get to meet people in person, answer questions live, and then to your other point, I don't go places unless they've asked me to speak because
yeah,
there's just so many places you can go, and I don't like going anywhere.
yeah, I understand completely. You know what I found out today or
Huh.
actually yesterday, is I'm apparently on an attendee list for a conference I didn't even know about.
Which conference?
It's the one in Chicago next week that is has to do with factoring. I don't even know.
Well, I'd heard about that. Isn't that some like cryptocurrency thing too? Or am I totally wrong? I have no idea.
I literally know nothing about it, but apparently I'm an attendee, and
Good for you. Well,
yeah,
congratulations.
wait, I'm like, I guess I'll fly up to Chicago and just show up. Who knows?
It's nice. Chicago in October, late September. It's a nice place. I'll be in Chicago myself 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now.
I thought you lived in Chicago.
I live in the suburbs, so I live about an hour and a half from the city. So I would tell people I live in Chicago, but I do not live in Chicago.
That's like me with Atlanta. I'm an hour and a half north, or really an hour north,
Yeah.
but say I'm from Atlanta, but
So
I'm
you're
not.
close to Chattanooga, then you're close to the Freight Alley world.
Kind of. I'm 2 hours away from Chattanooga. I'm an hour northeast from Atlanta, so I'm at Lake Lanier.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm right there in Gainesville, Georgia.
Oh, so you know that my friends at Siphon. Do you know Siphon well?
I'm going on their podcast next Thursday.
Ah, good. I love Steve Siphon. He's a great guy.
They do so much for the community around here. It's honestly crazy. Like, everywhere you go, it is Siphon, and they sponsor all the kids' sports all over town. They're huge with the community. It's really
That's
great.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. That's a great team of people over there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, okay, cool. So you're always crazy busy doing all the things. I don't even know how you sleep. I'm sure you don't. Are you like me
I
where you get like 6 to 7 hours and 6, 7,
so
and you're good?
I look at myself as like a high performing engine. I need a good 8. If I don't get enough sleep, there's
Okay.
no point in even trying. There's no point in trying. So for me, I really do love a good night's sleep. And I have a sleeping mask, I have earplugs, I travel with those things. Like I am
Yeah.
not built for limited amounts of sleep. I envy the folks. I respect them. They can handle it with less sleep, but that's not me.
I think sleeping is the biggest waste of time. I'm like, this is so and
No.
that's literally how I think of sleep. I'm like, I'm wasting time when I could be doing other things by sleeping. So whenever there was that one movie where they came out with like, you take a pill, Time, I think it's called, with
Yeah.
Justin Timberlake or something, and you take a pill and you can stay up forever. I'm like, oh, I want that, but
My father's wired to sleep for 4 to 5 hours a night. That is how he's always been. I don't know how people do it. I have no desire. I love a good sleep. I really do.
I don't know how you get everything done in the amount of hours in the day though. So you're a busy guy.
I'm productive. I look at it that way. I'm productive. I don't have to spend a ton of time to do the things I need to do, but I am productive when I am doing something,
Are you a
hopefully.
list maker? Do you make like all your lists of your to dos, or are you just You
Yeah,
got
so
it.
I have a dry erase board. I start off every day generally with like 5 things that must be done, and I cross them off as we go, and then we add new ones, and if it doesn't get completed, it goes on the list for tomorrow, and then I put all the traveling that I have on the same whiteboard. So I like to visualize things,
Yeah.
and I like to cross things off lists.
Yeah. I'm a list checker as well, but usually I lose my list midday, so I need a whiteboard.
The whiteboard is awesome. It's very helpful. It's very, very helpful.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to invest in one. I gotta take some tips from Matt to get my life together.
I'm happy to share any wisdom that I can
Perfect.
offer.
I love it. Okay, let's get into the fun stuff because
Yeah.
I love talking about all the logistic stuff. So I what question I have for you is basically the rest of the show we could talk about this because honestly we could talk about this for hours. But broker liability, I
Yeah.
think there's we kind of mentioned it already as a teaser in this already talking, but there is so many times that maybe it's like a load was stolen, cargo theft or something, and then the carrier's insurance denies it because they say whatever. And so it's like how much responsibility goes on the carrier, how much goes on to the broker. Same with safety. How much is actually, I mean, as a broker, you're not sitting there with the guys. So how do you really know they did their pre trip? English proficiency is a whole nother thing we could talk about for hours, I'm sure. But like that, so I guess if you'll give me some insight on as far as like fighting a case, and I know you've done it for like the carrier side, but
Yeah.
fighting a case where as a broker, you have like a platform that does the vetting for you. You do have certain rules that you follow. How you're not sitting in there with the guy. So what's your take on all of that?
Yeah, I would say if you talk to the leaders of big brokerages, cargo theft and fraud is something that they do think about quite a bit, but a lot of them will invest in the technologies like what you have or what others have put together, and they follow a process and they do their best to validate is this someone who's a bad actor pretending to be something that they're not.
Right.
And the number is it's like about $35 billion is the number. TIA has come out and said this is what we're really looking at. But if you're talking to the big brokers, what keeps them up at night? What makes them go, "I don't know if I can handle this," is
Uh,
the broker liability. Now, the general idea is that if you're a motor carrier, if you're a trucker or a trucking company and you have a catastrophic accident you cause, you're
mhm.
gonna be at fault. Your driver, your company, you are at fault.
Yeah.
But what has been this new trend, it's not necessarily new, it's just becoming more prevalent because we have so many brokers, is
Right.
that brokers are sometimes on the hook for the
Yeah.
negligence of a motor carrier. So I use the example of the case in Texas, Werner's case, where a trucking company, they ended up winning in the Texas Supreme Court. But in that case, they were held liable to the tune of $100 million.
Yeah.
How many brokers in this country can handle $100 million verdict? There might be a handful that can take that punch, but the vast majority of companies could not sustain that type of liability. So brokers have this thing called F4A. It's a federal statute that basically says brokers, you're in charge of price, route, and service. You're not essentially guaranteeing the safety of the motor carrier.
Mm.
Now, if you're a broker and the only thing you use to qualify a trucking company is FMCSA, the actual regulator of our industry, you're probably not doing a very good job. You
Right.
probably can't rely on that information alone.
Yeah.
And what we have now seen are a split among the circuits. So what happens, these cases are all very similar. A truck driver is hired by a broker to move something for a shipper. The broker does the validation process, they get through the doors, and the
Mm.
motor carrier has something catastrophic happen. And they look at the motor carrier and they say, how much insurance do you have? And the average, the minimum threshold for insurance in our industry is $750,000. That number, that's a 2-week stay in the hospital.
Yeah.
That is almost nothing. And when that number was first established, that was in the 1980s. Never been adjusted for inflation, never increased. And
Wow.
so if you have someone who's just died or been severely injured, you're going to look and say, who else might be at fault? Who else can I go after? Can I go after CH or Echo or TQL? And
Mhm.
that's what happens. They go after the big broker. So what has now happened, Danielle, is you have federal circuits splitting on the question of whether a broker can be held liable. So
Right.
our federal system has the Supreme Court at the top. Underneath them are these appellate courts, and the appellate courts run their circuit. So Illinois, we're in the Seventh Circuit. That's Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin. You have the Ninth Circuit out in California, Washington, Oregon, Alaska, all those folks out west. You have the 11th Circuit, which is like, Florida and Alabama and all that. You have the Sixth Circuit, like, Michigan and Ohio, all the other states. And they're asked this question: can a broker be held liable for the negligence of a motor carrier? And
Mhm.
now you have a clear split. The Sixth Circuit and the Ninth Circuit say the broker can be liable.
Hmm.
The Seventh Circuit and the 11th Circuit say the broker can't be liable. So what happens? This needs to be brought to the Supreme Court, and there are multiple cases trying to go up to the Supreme Court, but they don't have to grant it. They don't have to grant certiorari. They can just kick it down the road. And so if you're a broker, this keeps you up at night because
Right.
one accident can put you out of business. And it's one of these things where it gets a little bit of attention, but not as much as I think it ought to.
Well, I think it honestly, for the average Joe, it is kind of confusing, all the back and forth and all.
Yeah.
How do you really understand everything? So I like I said, you always do such a great job at dumbing it down for like the average folks like me who don't want to read. So the two different verdicts like that. So there is a total of how many cases that went up that far?
There are there are hundreds and hundreds of these cases.
Wow, that's wild.
People may not know about these cases because they get settled before it goes to trial or before it goes to appeal. So the only cases we see as the outside public is when
Mhm.
it goes to trial, some verdict is rendered, and then maybe it gets appealed, and then we see it go through the process over the next couple of years. But I know for a fact that hundreds of these cases are happening all across America right now. And if you're a broker and you have an accident, it really matters if that accident happened in California or Illinois or Wisconsin, and you have to bake that into how you do business because most brokers don't carry liability insurance.
Right.
Some of them do. The big ones certainly do, but this is why it's so terrifying because one day you're out of business, and it's crazy.
So if I was a broker and is it almost better to like only function in those states that are not like that if I don't have that extra layer of insurance? I mean, how do you even mitigate your risk that way?
Yeah, you really can't. Honestly, I mean, you can try to say, I'm not going to move freight in California or I'm not going to move
No
freight in Michigan, but you're really not able to do that. And I would also say, most brokers do not understand this thing. They don't understand that they might be brought into litigation simply because they hired a motor carrier who had an accident take place. The Hope Trans case is a great example of this.
Yeah.
Hope Trans is a motor carrier who is hired by Covenant to move freight for USPS. And
Mhm.
I promise you, Hope Trans is dead. They're not bankrupt right this second, but they're already a zombie. They're already dead. And they
Nobody's
will look at Covenant and they will say to Covenant, you should have known. You should have known this motor carrier was not safe. And if you ask me now, again, not giving legal advice, don't take legal advice from a podcast. If you think you need a lawyer, you probably do. It's just
yeah.
not me. But if I'm sitting in the seat of Covenant and I say, this motor carrier had a 35% vehicle out of service rate, and
Yeah.
I chose them, maybe there should be some liability. I don't know. So we do need the Supreme Court to weigh in, but you can see how these cases get crazy out of hand once you realize just how dangerous this stuff is.
Yeah, exactly. I do think Hope Trans will probably move it up the ladder. Your awesome sponsors, Gen Logs. I saw Ryan post they were on that Texas, yeah, they're on that Texas whatever news show or whatever, talking about how they're still operating, which is I don't even know how they're getting freight. They must have their own customers or something, and they're just not watching the news. I don't know, but
Well,
and even
this is just a kind of a function of how broken the industry is to an extent.
yeah,
So the barrier to enter this business is very, very small. To get a CDL, it's about a month, maybe a little bit less. To get insurance, again, it's $750,000. It's a lot of premium money, but not a ton.
yeah,
ELDs are self-certified, so you really have a bunch of different choices with your ELD
oh,
provider.
yeah,
And so if you're out there and you're a broker, you see that they're still they're still authorized to move freight. Now, they get on intervention. There's been some FMCSA has kind of been responsive or slightly responsive, but it's only through political pressure. So we don't really have a lot of great tools because trucks are involved in accidents all the time. FMCSA talks about, are you involved with the crash? Not your liability, but were you part of a crash? So they look at the numbers and it seems like an average or a little bit worse than average, and people still tender them freight. And they could, to your point, have direct customers as well. But you move freight as cheap as you want, and you'll find brokers who will give that freight to you.
Yeah, exactly. And there I will say some of the bigger customers or brokerages out there will say, "Well, if FMCSA says it's fine, it should be fine." I mean, a lot of
Absolutely.
people say that. And you probably could fight that in court pretty hard by saying, "Well, the government says it's fine," that type of thing. But I don't know, that's like a slippery like I said, that's why there's so many different decisions and it's I don't know. So what would be your if you were opening up a brokerage today, what would be the biggest I mean, I know that there's vetting tools and stuff too, but there's also a balance where it's like I have freight to move and there maybe I am super desperate and this is the only truck available. I got to spend out the wazoo and lose lots of money, but and this guy's it. This is it. Would you take that risk? What would be your advice for brokers on what their policy should be?
For brokers, the best advice is typically the same advice I give to anybody. Again, this is not legal advice.
Yeah,
Talk to your
of course.
lawyer if you think you're a lawyer. But I would say
You and me.
build a process and do not deviate from the process.
Yeah.
The thing that gives lawyers the ability to come after you and to really first twist the screws and cause you a lot of frustration is when you have an established process and you choose to not do it. I was at the broker care summit. I enjoyed attending it. And I'll just say one of the things I heard that I would caution anyone to follow is, well, there's a motor carrier who didn't meet our qualifications, but we met them in person and we said we're going to work together because we got to meet them in person, but they didn't meet our normal qualifications.
Mhm.
That sounds like a great story. That sounds like this is partnerships and making good deals. But if I'm a lawyer and I hear you had a process that you deviated from and
Yeah.
then an accident took place, I have my hook. I
Yeah.
have my hook and I'm going to twist it until you cry uncle. So you have to have good processes, work very closely with your insurer and your attorneys to say, am I doing the right thing? And what can I do better? And that's the best you can do. Because the thing I go back to is brokers shouldn't be liable for these things. I mean, I can see in the really off cases, maybe just letting anybody through, maybe there's an issue there, but brokers are not guarantors of the motor carrier's performance. That's not what they exist for. And if we can't rely on the FMCSA to tell us when someone's allowed to move freight, what are we doing? Like, what's
Right.
the point if we're not going to rely on the federal regulator to give us good information? It's silly to say, well, now we can't do it as the feds, but we'll make the broker take the responsibility. Again, it's absurd.
That's absurd. And a lot of times, like seeing there's stuff that the government has intel wise and inspection wise and whatever that if they weren't showing to us, how in the world would we ever know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's like a whole nother
Well, I mean,
thing.
I look and go like, this is the supply chain we deserve, the
Yeah.
supply chain we wanted. 1980, there were 18,000 motor carriers. Today, there's 550,000 motor carriers. 1980, there were maybe 6 or 7 brokers. Today, there's 25,000 brokers.
Wow.
There's 1,000 people in the FMCSA tasked with overseeing millions of commercial drivers, hundreds of thousands of motor carriers, tens of thousands of brokers, and their resources are $1 billion a year. They just don't have the ability to do this at scale. And that's what we see every single day in the business.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think even they are making some headway. Like I talked to Ken Riddle at FMCSA, and what they're trying to do is at least like baby step one. They're getting one system to handle everything. So there's not
Absolutely.
that don't even talk to each other. Like let's at least have a good tech platforms to at least automate some things for you guys because bless your heart. But then after that, it's like, yeah, they need more resources and also even better tech from there. Like they do need tech that will automate things. And I do think they need to not have that just be government based. They do need like outside tech companies to, provide things for them personally.
Absolutely. And it goes back to where we're going to talk about the English language proficiency. This is a thing that's gotten a ton of press coverage. And I'll tell anyone who listens, it's been the law since the 1930s.
Oh,
Like
really?
it's not new. It's not new. Oh, it's not new. It is about the enforcement of that regulation. And
Yeah.
so different administrations can say, well, we look at ELP and we think, well, that's not an out of service issue. We'll just give them a ticket, or maybe we'll just waive it and not worry about it. But it goes back to the sickness we have of cheap and fast freight. You
Yeah.
have schools that pump people out. with no training, or at least limited training. They
Yes.
out on the highways. We have a story of driver shortage, so we need to bring in more people, ever more meat for the grinder. And when you talk about ELP, people are like, well, clearly someone's doing something. And I'll say this, no, they're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Because if you're not going to increase the enforcement resources, more humans enforcing regulations, you're not going to have a different outcome. They're just going to pick a different thing to write you a ticket for. I will
Yeah.
say, you should and you must, by law, be able to communicate in English and read our signs. You have no choice. That is what we have to require. But are the schools doing this?
Yeah.
Maybe not. So there's a whole aspect of all of this where it's like we act surprised when we see these things happen, but it's because we are in an industry where we really want to keep rates very, very low and barriers to enter very, very low because the American consumer, you and me, do not want to pay for safer roads. We
Yeah.
choose not to. We don't know we have that choice, but we've chosen not to.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And the English proficiency thing as a broker, it's like, to be super frank, what you would normally see, let's say if I were to enforce something and be like, hey, I asked these series of questions while I'm on the phone with the driver. Most of the time, if that driver is like his English is terrible, they are passing the phone to their dispatcher, and their dispatcher is simply just acting like the carrier. There's no way of knowing unless you are loading that truck.
There's no, and that's why I go back when people think like, we have a regulation. Who else can help us enforce it? Can the broker help us enforce it? Are brokers going to go look and see mud flaps
Yeah,
and tread depth and a truck tire? Like, no, we wouldn't expect them to do that. We assume as a broker that the FMCSA is doing their job. And
yeah,
if they don't do their job, we have to find other tools. But it's an interesting question. It's a very interesting question.
I know. Well, and then I wonder too, let's say, because right now I get asked by my customers, and they're like, "Is MCP going to add something in for English proficiency?" I'm like, I mean, our everything, we don't even have an option in another language. It's just in English. So if they can't navigate through even your packet in English,
Right.
but that could be the dispatcher, or that, who knows? Like it,
Well,
or
there'll
they,
be AI dispatchers that'll do the same thing for you, or overseas dispatchers. Like, we can't expect the brokers to be doing this, or shippers. Shippers are not equipped to do a test on English language proficiency. That's what the regulator's supposed to do.
but then on that point too, how are they even going to get to all those hundreds of thousands of drivers? And so that's like you said, it's to me like it's a hot ticket word right now because of what happened with Florida, and I think
Yeah.
Trump's really pushing things. Not to get political, but Trump's really pushing, American, American, American. But at the end of the day, I don't see this being a long term enforcement. I don't see this being a long term thing. I mean, it's
Like,
not like the ELD thing whenever that got enforced. This is totally different.
characterized when I talk to people about this issue is, okay, let's look at ELP. What does this mean if we have less than 1% of drivers that can't speak in
It's
English
like
and can't communicate?
10% though.
It's a tiny fraction of the overall drivers. It's
I thought it
be
was
certainly less than 1% that cannot speak English. But if we were to say, what if it was 20% of drivers could not speak English? How crazy would that be for our country if 1 in 5 couldn't speak English? And I say, now take that idea of 1 in 5 drivers not being able to speak English and say, that's the equipment.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
equipment is 1 in 5 of the actual things that move the stuff is not safe. Would you change your
Yeah.
behavior? And they're like, I didn't think of it that way. And like, I understand. I understand. That's why I get so animated about this, because I remember speaking to an FMCSA commissioner at an IANA meeting a couple years ago. And I said, what is your belief on the vehicle maintenance? Because 20% out of service is the standard for over a decade. And he said,
Yeah.
we believe that accidents happen because of driver behavior. And we believe that vehicle maintenance is not a predictor of crashes and fatalities. And whatever their belief is, I don't care. The reality is, if we're not maintaining the equipment properly, then we are having unsafe roads. And
Yeah.
if we can't meet the threshold of having things maintained properly, either remove the thresholds or accept that we are in a position where 1 in 5 is unsafe at any speed. It's crazy.
It's crazy. Driving down the road with your kids in the car, looking, how many trucks do you see? 1 in 5? That's wild.
I mean, it's we all want to get home in the same condition that we left. Like, that's the goal. Safely delivering freight on time and undamaged is difficult even in the best circumstances. And
Yeah.
yet it remains the eighth most dangerous job in the country of driving a truck. The
Right.
vehicle maintenance is terrible. The insurance rates are underinsured. And we act like this is like we're going to focus on ELP. And that's fine. Focus on whatever you're going to focus on. Just make sure there's resources to enforce all of the regulations. Because a light that's missing or a tire that's too bald is an out of service violation. You have to stop.
Right. I mean, how many times have you I mean, I've been on the road where a tire has straight up flown off and has been, like, whipping at my car, and you're having to figure I mean, as a average I mean, I think that even happened to me when I was, like, early 20s. I'm not a well enough driver to even understand how to even navigate that, and a lot of that stuff is simply, doing a pre-check, doing simple things to make sure you're safe. I mean, I know
Uh,
I've never been a truck driver, like, I don't know what it's really like, but to me, it's like, before I leave, I make sure at my house, I make sure my car's fine.
a wheel runoff is the most terrifying thing in supply chain. When a tire comes off of a trailer or a truck and it's rolling down the street, that is a death. Like if it hits a car, you are dead. You are not going to come home from that accident. And I've dealt with these cases. Like I've dealt with those cases. And you deal with the victims and what has happened, and you try to find a way to help them be made whole. And that's why the verdicts are so high, because you get in front of a jury and say, this little kid would have come home if
Mm,
they had just done the inspection before they got behind the wheel. But I'll give you a quick example of like what it was like before and what it's like now. If you were in the pre-deregulation days, Danielle, and you were a driver, 80% of them were Teamsters or unionized drivers. They were all W-2s, but most of them were Teamsters. Most of them were unionized. And if you were told to get in the truck and drive, and you said, I don't think that truck is safe, and your manager, your dispatcher says, get behind that wheel, you have a grievance you are filing that day. And that manager may lose their job for trying to get you behind the wheel. If you do that today in some fleets, say, I'm not going to drive, it's unsafe. You lose your job. You're fired because it is different than it was back then. So we have made it very difficult for truckers. And it's kind of a feature, not a
yeah,
bug of the supply chain.
right. Well, even as a broker, when somebody would say, "Hey, I have this going on, I can't do your load." I mean, how pissed off would I be being like, "You're canceling my load last minute?"
Absolutely.
And it's like, maybe the guy was I mean, what's sad is there's enough drivers that pull that line that are lying, but what if he was actually being legit? He's just safe but yeah, I'm sure I reamed him out.
This is the thing that I go back to is like we look at the discrepancy between motor carriers before deregulation and motor carriers and brokers today. It is cheaper. It is
Yeah.
100% cheaper to go with the system we currently have, which is a bunch of independent contractors or small motor carriers, a gaggle of brokers, and then there's still the dedicated guys in the big fleets, but they don't move the same percentage as they used to. And that's why it happens. Like why brokers exist for any reason, in my opinion, is to shield the shipper from liability with the motor carrier. The old days, the shipper was the motor carrier. And if they
Right.
weren't their own trucking company, they'd hire Yellow or CF or Roadway. And those guys had all the insurance, all the unions, all the problems. And so when Motor Carrier Act in 1980 was signed by Jimmy Carter, Democratic president, they said they were going to save $8 billion a year. And that was in 1980 money. Now it's probably close to 36 or $40 billion they would have saved. And they saved every single penny and more and more. It's crazy.
That is crazy. It's crazy to think about that because you don't think about that, Nobody
No,
talks about it enough, I don't feel like.
I think that if whenever I go to a conference, I try to get people to tell me, like when they raise hands, like who was in this business before 1980? Who worked at Yellow? Who worked at Roadway? We look at people and go, oh, you were ex Apple or ex Google or ex Uber. I don't care. That's
Yeah.
boring. You were Yellow? You were CF? Oh my gosh. Tell me how you did this without ELDs. Tell me how you without telematics. Tell me how you did it when you couldn't fire somebody. Like
Yeah.
you couldn't do anything. So it's a different world, but I love the stories. I love to know where we've been because it tells you where you're going to go.
Yeah. No, I do think there needs to be a little bit more regulation. It's hard because I'm not anti-government, but I'm also like, don't be telling me what to do. But I'm also like, let's keep our roadways safe. And how else do you do that to the masses? Go ahead.
I am a conservative. I will fully admit that. I prefer less regulation. I don't want to see broker transparency. A lot of things I don't want to see. But what
Mhm.
I'd love to see, and it's very controversial, everyone disagrees with me. I would like to see the minimum insurance raised from 750 to more. I don't know what more would be, but more. And that would put a lot of motor carriers out of business. They would go away. They couldn't afford it. Big shippers have seen this problem and now force brokers and motor carriers to carry more insurance because shippers, one thing they will not do, they will not be held liable for what the broker or the motor carrier does. They are very clear about that. And
Mhm.
so we see shippers in a private world making things more expensive, but that's the reg I would do. And then I would say if you don't have your vehicle maintenance, like if it's above 20%, like you should just be out of business. Like if you're going to be mediocre in this industry, we don't need you. We need
Yeah.
people who achieve and want to achieve excellence.
Well, what's okay, so whenever you go to New York, I did a New York tour over there, and they were talking about like if you're walking the streets and you see they post their food, grading whatever on their windows. They're like, if you see anything less than A, avoid that.
Yeah,
There's so many options in New York to eat. Do not go to anywhere that's not an A. Usually if you fall past an A, you go out of business. It's the same thing. I think it would be the same type of thing. You
absolutely.
hit that minimum thing, like, there's other options out there. I can go with whoever. There is plenty of people. I know they say driver shortages all day long, but there's still plenty of drivers,
Yeah,
especially.
the rates, I mean, we still have way too much capacity. The only way the market changes in our industry currently is either you have more customer demand for things, and that is not happening. We have record levels of credit card defaults, record levels of automobile loan defaults, student loan delinquencies are up. So the American consumer does not have the money to go buy things. So the
Right.
other way this changes is if the capacity goes away. And we still have, last I saw, more motor carriers entering the business than leaving. And
Wow.
that is like, but why would you come in when everyone's making terrible money? But people still think there's a path. And I love entrepreneurs. I want them to be successful, but we have way too much capacity in the business.
Right. So so the tariff stuff that's going on. I know we talked
Yeah.
about a quick second, but that's a good segue to talk about that. So when everyone was even my company was freaking out whenever tariffs first came into thing. They're like, hold on spending, hold on doing anything. We don't know what's going to happen. So give us like the dummy version of tariffs because I don't understand any of this. I keep seeing things and I'm like, just tell me if I'm affected or not. That's all I want to know. I don't care about anything else.
I'm going to say this in a way that I think is the least controversial way that's hopefully not hyperbolic.
Why no
This
controversy? I'm just kidding. Go.
Well, it's a very controversial opinion. The case that is currently dealing with the tariffs, the big ones, the IEPA ones, is the case called VOS Selections versus Trump. VOS Selections is the most important case in my lifetime, and
Mhm.
probably one of the most important in a generation or more. The very foundation of this is that how you use an emergency declaration to radically transform the American economy.
Hmm.
So this is the story. IEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977, is a law that replaced an older law called Trading with the Enemies. Long story short, it says the president can declare an emergency and do something. There are certain things that they clearly say you can do, and then there's inferences about what you can do. So
Hmm.
in April of 2025, President Trump declared a national emergency, saying it had to do with the trade deficit. It had to do with fentanyl and other things he would say is part of this emergency, and then created tariffs on every single country in the world.
Hmm.
And the question of this emergency is first, how do you stop an emergency? The
Right.
way that IEPA says you can stop an emergency is if Congress, the House and the Senate, pass essentially a bill and say, we don't think it's an emergency. And it would go to President Trump
Hmm.
and he can veto it. So, how do you overcome that? Under
Right.
IEPA, it's 2/3. So, 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate. It is impossible. We
Wow.
live in a hyper partisan environment. You cannot get 2/3 of anyone to do anything.
Yeah.
So VOS Selections is an importer, I think, out of New York, and they sued. And they said, we do not believe, one, IEPA allows you to use tariffs this way. And two, even if it did, Congress can't delegate that power to the president. It's
Yeah.
just they can't give that power up. And I use this example, and we'll get to why this case is so very, very important, but the war power, the power of Congress to declare war, that is their power. It is
Right.
in the Constitution. The last time our Congress declared war was in World War II. What
Hmm.
had happened was Japan had attacked us. We declared war on Japan. And then for whatever reason, Germany declared war on us. So we declared war on Germany.
Hmm.
That was the last time we did it. Now, we've had plenty of conflicts. They call them police actions. We
Huh.
have watched for almost 100 years our Congress give power to the presidency. So back to IEPA. It goes before this thing called the Court of International Trade. And they say unequivocally Donald Trump violated the law, that tariffs must go away. Within one day, it's appealed to this thing called the Federal Circuit Court, the Federal Appellate Court for the Federal Circuit, and the Appellate Court hears the case. They heard this case. They said the tariffs remain in place. Let us listen to it. We'll make a determination. And then just last week, the federal court on an en banc hearing. En banc means all of them together. So normally in federal litigation and appeals, there's 3 justices that will listen to the appeal. This was everybody for the federal circuit. They issue an opinion and say, this was illegal.
Oh,
Trump can't do this. And they say until October 15th or October 14th, the tariffs are going to stick until then. But on that date, they're gone unless the Supreme Court of the United States weighs in. So
hmm.
on September 3rd, just last week, the Trump administration filed a thing called a petition for certiorari. They go to the Supreme Court and they say, can you please listen to this case? And the Supreme Court doesn't have to do anything. Everything they do for the most part is discretionary. But if they get 4 justices, then they will hear the case. Well,
Hmm.
they did. 4 people said yes. And so now the Supreme Court has accepted the petition for certiorari. The Supreme Court is now going to hear the case of IEPA.
Hmm.
Now, that's where we're sitting at currently. What I will tell people, and again, I told you earlier, I'm a conservative.
Yeah.
I do not believe the ends justify the means. If you declare an emergency, how long do they typically last? They last about 10 years. 10 years. And if
Wow.
there's no check on what an emergency is because you need 2/3 of Congress to weigh in, what does that mean? I use this example. Imagine your worst political rival gets into office and has that power. And they say on day one, greenhouse gas emissions are a national emergency. Every internal combustion engine, every component for internal combustion engine, 5,000% tariff. And you would say, I don't want that.
Right.
Doesn't matter because you've given this power to one human being that was never supposed to be there. So
Yeah. Not a
this
dictator.
is the case. This is the biggest case of my lifetime. So that's all the IEPA stuff, at least as we sit right this second. I have suspicions of where the Supreme Court will go, but that's the current status of it.
What's your suspicions?
I believe the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the American Trucking Associations will file what they call amicus briefs. These are called friends of the court. They will come in and they will say, we believe something different should happen. We want to either be on the side of the states or VOS selections, or we're on side of Trump. I think both the chamber and the ATA will be against Trump and the use of IEPA in this way. So that might be important. But honestly, I would say 6-3, maybe 5-4, the Trump tariffs remain in place. I
Hmm.
do not think the current justices will say that the president does not have this power. Now,
Yeah.
maybe Congress can fix it later on. I don't think that they do, but I would be very sad if the IEPA tariffs are upheld. I think they should go down. I think it's a very, very terrible use of executive power, but we live in a very different environment than we did 15, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, and in the beginning, it was interesting because, like I said, me as a dummy and not knowing anything about tariffs and not understanding anything in the world, you would hear, and I'm a conservative too for the most part, and so like I would read things and it's like, oh, tariffs are gonna be great for us, like we'll be better, like you'll no longer have to pay federal taxes. I have to pay an insane amount of money in the federal taxes every single year. I owe on top of paying the max, top of claiming zero on my paycheck. What the heck? I got 3 kids, like, why am I paying so much? So for me, I'm like, please, anything to get my taxes down because it is insane, and I don't understand where all
Yeah.
the money goes to, like how we were talking about with the FMCSA, like, they're not even doing what I think they should be doing. I could go on and on for days about different government agencies. Anyways, where I guess I'm getting at is I think it was sold to us really differently than what is actually happening. And then and being in logistics, it's we're hearing about it differently. Whereas if I talk to like my grandparents who are not in logistics, like it doesn't really make sense. They're just like, I don't understand how this works. And it's a good thing because we want, you know, this to be made in America. We want that. We want that. I'm like, yeah, yeah, but we still have things coming from like it's not
Yeah,
everything in the world can be made in America. That's not possible.
then this is the big, I think the challenge you run into is that manufacturers are watching what happens. And typically, when there is a lot of tariffs, manufacturers do not increase production. They typically raise prices, knowing full well that a tariff can go away. If someone
Yeah.
changes office, changes opinion, why would you invest the capital to try to make something here domestically when you can just simply raise your own prices and be on par with your competitors who have to pay a tariff? And tariffs are taxes. They are taxes paid by the importer. So
Yeah.
at the initial time of IEPA and the tariffs coming through, many shippers ate the cost. They just simply absorbed the cost and didn't pass it on. But that is not going to be the case. You go to look at buying a new truck or a new trailer, there is a tariff. You are paying for that subframe from steel that's not coming from America.
Yeah.
And I think when I go back to it, it's like, I'm not against tariffs. Like, I think tariffs are perfectly fine if Congress and the president agree. If
Yeah.
you allow one human being to declare essentially a global trade war with no check or balance, do you want this? Not just for your guy or gal, but for the opposite side who has the exact opposite opinion of you. If you can't stop it with your own people, you will not stop it with your enemies. And so I don't like it. I don't like it.
So let's say if this stays in place or whatever. Let's say Trump does negotiate enough tariffs where it's down enough. So then technically I mean, this can't go on. You said like 10 years, but let's say he does win at all the things because he is a bully and he does push people
Yeah.
around. A lot of times gets what he wants. So it's like, let's say he gets all the percentages where he wants, then technically he can close it saying it's no longer an emergency. That would be like his best outcome, right? Or what is like the way for him to win this?
I think the way to look at this is if they're allowed to stand. If Supreme Court says this use of IEPA is correct, that means that any future president, day one of their administration, will have a plan to declare a national emergency.
Oh,
And they
wow.
will declare it immediately. And whatever political goals they have before they got elected, they will implement them through emergency powers. There's this belief in this thing called a unitary executive. This is not a new belief. This is something that's been around for well over 100 years. But there's an idea that the only branch of government that actually matters is the executive. The legislative and the judiciary are just obstacles in the way of complete executive control. No one had done emergencies like Trump has done, but Trump saw the machine and saw exactly how you operate the machine. So if
Yeah.
you don't think that your political enemies will do the same that he has done, I think anyone's mistaken. So
Yeah.
my belief is if the best case scenario for Trump, I really feel this is true, is that he loses at the Supreme Court. The economy comes roaring back. He can take credit for this. And we see our Supreme Court check the executive branch and say, you know what? You're not that powerful. Congress can't do that. Congress didn't do that. If you want to change it, go back to Congress and get a new thing. Because in IEPA, it doesn't say you can raise tariffs. It doesn't say that word ever. So if you
Yeah.
want to have that in there, you can have Congress modify it. So this is why I think the best case for Trump is that he loses. Now, he would not think that way. He would
Okay.
not think a loss is good for him. But
Yeah.
if he is successful, it is a terrible thing for the American people. It is a terrible thing.
Well, if it
We
is
need each leg
yeah.
of the stool to be strong.
Yeah, and if it's true where you really want America to be great again, that's probably part of it. You don't want a dictator in there at the end of the day.
You don't. You do not want that. Whether they're politically on your side or not, it doesn't matter. We built this country through essentially a three-legged stool: executive, legislative, judiciary,
Mhm.
each one checking and balancing the others. If you don't have that, or if you see the executive growing in rapid ways, once you get the power, it doesn't go back. It does not leave. It stays with that office forever.
Yeah. Power is a crazy thing to give out like that. Yeah, gotta have that.
It's an interesting time. So
It is.
that's why I like talking about this subject, because I do think if most Americans understood what was being asked of them or was being discussed, they would be like, wait, I don't want that. Like, I like the idea of making other people pay tariffs. I'm fine with that, but I don't want to see someone come in and make a tariff on something that I really care about and have
Yeah.
no way to stop them.
Right, and just like you said, though, it really doesn't have to really do with tariffs. has to do with anything else that could happen future down the line. Just who knows? Like it could be a whole different crazy situation that somebody has a hate for this or hate for that. I mean, like what happened with Charlie Kirk. I mean, it's terrible. And like there's that much rage and hate in America that I hate, and I wish it wasn't like that. But until we get that kind of under control, and who knows how we even do that, we got to have.
I agree with you completely. I think one of the things that I always try to emphasize is that our founding fathers despise each other's ideas.
Yeah.
You can go back and look at the Federalist Papers or the Anti-Federalist Papers and see how they debated viciously in the news, in person, anywhere they could, because they did fundamentally disagree on certain aspects of it. But ultimately, they were able to compromise. And I
Mhm.
think our entire society is based on compromise. And we as Americans, whether you're Republican or Democrat, conservative, moderate, liberal, socioeconomic conservative, fiscal conservative, whatever your brand of politics are, we are so much more similar than we really give ourselves credit for. One, like I use the example of the Second Amendment. People have really strong opinions on Second Amendment, but we all generally agree that there is regulations. Like you don't want your neighbor to have a bazooka. You don't want your friends to have landmines. We agree on some level of regulation. And
Yeah.
it's these niches where we start fighting. And anybody who wants you to hate your adversary is not doing you a good job. You should not hate your adversaries. You should not try to promulgate rage.
Right.
Our goal is de-escalation. There's no utility and no place for political violence in our discourse. It just doesn't serve a purpose.
It's not worth it. It's like there's
No.
so many other things out there. And for instance, like there's this comedian that I'm obsessed with right now, and Jeff Dye is his name. But like 10 years ago, he was, a liberal. And then now those liberals are considered to be conservatives. And then like think about Democrats back with Kennedy. And then now that's almost like the conservatives now. It's like
That's right.
the shift of the title changes what the actual meaning is a lot of times throughout history. So you having so much rage and hate could be one day that's what your title becomes.
That's
You
right.
know what I mean? So it's so like it's the bigger picture of the world is so much less than just your little hate for this or hate for that. So I mean, let's see. I don't know what's going to happen, but I do think what was interesting when Charlie Kirk thing happened is my son who's 16. He was like the first one to tell me. He called me. He's like, "Hey, do you hear about Charlie Kirk?" I'm like, "Oh my god, that's insane!" And he's like, "I can't believe somebody has that much hate." That was the first thing he said. I'm like, "Oh, I hope that this generation sees all the turmoil and all the craziness, and they're like, no more." And then they keep that going, please.
Absolutely. 31 years old. It's unimaginable. Unimaginable.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
hope these
horrifying.
little babies and all that stuff. Anyways, we can talk for hours. I
This is
know
all the depressing stuff. I love bringing people the sad news.
yeah,
That's my jam.
that's really what you're good at. That and puppetry.
It's
Now
very
you
good.
tell the news with your puppet. Can you imagine how much views you get with that?
That might be the next way to go. I think you're onto something, Danielle. I think I might try that.
I would watch it and be like, "Oh, he's," especially because you have such a way of explaining things that little old me can understand. So I
Well,
love
I love the ability to communicate this kind of stuff. There are so many things happening, and people want you to believe a certain thing or have a viewpoint. And my goal is, I don't care what someone believes. I really don't.
it.
I don't care. I just want them to have a good foundation of how they get to that opinion. And the best
Mhm.
thing about being a lawyer is we are trained to understand our adversaries and what they think, because we have to be able to counter what they believe. And if you can't understand your enemy, then your political disagreement, it means you're not fully understanding your own position. You have to know other people and why they think the way that they do if you hope to persuade them of anything.
That's interesting. I never thought of it that way. But duh, that's what you guys do. I love
I'm a gun for hire. I'm a mercenary. That's what I am.
I know, you're awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Tell everybody how they can find you if you don't already follow you. I don't know how you don't, but if they don't, tell all the things.
I'm on the different places. Matthew Leffler or Armchair Addy, ATTYY, because ATTY is the abbreviation for the word attorney. I'm all over the place. I go to conferences. I go on the websites. I do the talkie thing. You can go to YouTube and find Just a Chef. I don't know if you search that, if it'll pop up. It might. I have no idea. But it's great. You should watch it.
Yeah.
He's ready to go. He's got ideas. He's got so many ideas. So thank you for having me, Danielle. It's been a great pleasure.
I know, it's been awesome. Well, thanks so much. Bye, everybody.
Take care.
You
Oh, hey.
you're talking. We have to record.
Thank you for inviting me on your podcast. I'm so glad to tell you about me. I'm a
Yes.
chef.
Tell me everything, chef.
So I grew up in a place called Italy. It's a place between Germany and Italy.
and I was a very, very cool guy.
Yeah.
And Hitler was so mad at me that he froze me in time. And now that's why I'm here. I
That's
was
why you're
frozen
here.
in time, but here I am to help you and tell you stories about the old days.
I love that. What kind of food do you make, chef?
I work in a factory that is behind 7-Eleven. And so I
Oh,
make food that comes in my factory and I give it to people.
I love
And
that.
sometimes people are very disrespectful. They say, Chef, I do not like to have the bug in my pasta. And I say, that's okay. People eat snails, people eat reptiles, and I just get one spider in my spaghetti, and I'm the bad guy. I'm not a bad guy. I'm a chef.
Oh my
People need to be nicer to me.
Of course. I would love to eat spiders. That would be there's so much protein in spiders.
You should come to my restaurant at the factory. So
I
the factory is behind the 7-Eleven, and every day the 7-Eleven workers put the things into my factory, and I rifle through them, and I make them good food for people.
I love this. 7-Eleven, that's my birthday, so that's my favorite gas station is 7-Eleven.
That's very nice for you. I hope you had a good birthday. I did not have a good birthday.
Oh no, what happened on your birthday?
I got bit by a rat.
What?
Well, you see, inside my factory, there's a bunch of rats. And it's not like Ratatouille. Like Ratatouille, they have you on the hair. That's not real life. Real rats bite you. And so I got bit by a rat on my birthday. It was very bad.
That is very bad. Did you survive? Like, obviously, you still survived. Were you in the hospital?
No, I was trying to make a vanilla cake. And I got so much blood in the cake that it became red velvet cake. And I gave it to all my friends. And then my friends got very sick. And I did not feel bad for them because that was my birthday. And I get so mad. I get so mad. People do not look. I still have my band-aid. See, that's why I got bit by the rat. Right there. I'm just a
How
guy.
are you not
I'm just trying to make it by in this work of that world. I'm trying to get some money. I would really like for your audience to send me money. That would be really nice. And then I'd be okay.
How do we send you money? We need to get you a real restaurant.
I think my factory is a real restaurant. What you say is very hurtful. It's a good place. Now, there are no chairs, and there are lots of bugs, and there are the rats, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a podcast too, and my podcast will have sponsors, like Rat-B-Gone. It's a spray that makes rats go away.
As long as you keep it out of the food, I think you're going to be good.
I don't make any promises. I'm very busy. I have a lot of fans.
Oh my God. I'm crying now.
I don't understand why you're crying. This is a great day for you.
Because you are making me laugh so hard.
No, the guy you talk to is very boring. Lawyers are not very cool. Chefs are cool. We're very popular.
Especially that came from in between Germany and Italy.
Italy.
Oh, Italy.
That's what it's called. I don't like you saying the wrong thing because it makes you look silly and it makes me very mad.
I can tell you're really bad, yeah.
I'm not a Muppet. I'm a chef. I don't like when people say, oh, you're a Muppet. I'm not a Muppet. I'm a chef.
What if you were to go on the Muppet Show? Would you decline? What if they said yes? What if they asked you?
That's a really good question. If they were going to give me money, then I would do it because I like money. But if they're not giving me money, they can go pound sand.
I think we could get you. I think we can make you be the chef for the Muppets.
I think that would be good because I would take Kermit the Frog and I would chop him into little bits and I would serve him up because I think frog legs are good to eat.
Oh my God. And pigs, the bacon.
I would eat pigs.
Yeah.
I would chop up, I'd take a hammer and I'd hit Miss Piggy with the hammer and then she will be dead and then I will cook her and it will be very good for me and very good for all the people.
Oh God, this is so funny.
I don't understand. This is not funny. This is real life.
Funny.
This is serious business. I'm not a joke. Am I a joke to you? I
No.
don't think so.
No.
Good.
All right, chef. I have to go to my next podcast recording. Can you tell everybody bye?
No. Don't go to that podcast recording. Go to Justice Sheriff and you go to my YouTube channel and you like, you subscribe, and then you send me money. And you tell your mom and dad. You say, Mom and Dad, I need to send Chef money because he needs to get out of here.
He does. He needs some help for sure.
That's very nice of you.
Okay, well, we're going to throw this on here. I cannot wait.
I'm
Bye,
so
Chef.
happy for me. Hooray for Chef. Hooray for Chef.
Thanks for coming on my show, Jeff. You're the best. Or Chef, you're the best.
I want to go viral and I feel very sick. That rat bite is infected.
Oh, my God.
I need a doctor.
You're so silly. All right, I'm stopping.